The doctor said my wife could only get pregnant by a miracle. Today, we have 5 miracles running around the house. The story you're about to hear is a real account. The names of the characters and places have been changed to protect the privacy of those involved. If you believe in miracles or have experienced one, share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. I never imagined that the happiest day of my life would also mark the beginning of such a painful journey. I remember it like it was yesterday, Ellen's radiant smile as we exchanged vows, promising eternal love. In that moment, the future seemed bright and full of promise. But life had other plans. A few months later, Ellen's unbearable pain led us to a medical evaluation that changed everything. The doctor entered the room with a somber expression, and his words fell upon us like a sentence. "I'm so sorry, but your wife has polycystic ovary syndrome and severe endometriosis. And there's more. Her uterus is literally reversed, attached to the posterior wall." The impact of that revelation shattered my world. Ellen was in tears, and I held her hand tightly, trying to find strength for both of us. "Doctor, what does that mean?" I managed to ask, my voice trembling. He sighed, his eyes filled with sympathy. "Unfortunately, it means it will be very difficult for you to conceive children naturally." Those words echoed in my mind like a funeral bell. Our dreams of starting a family seemed to vanish before our eyes. I held Ellen, trying to comfort her, but inside, my heart was breaking. After the initial shock, Ellen and I refused to give up. We decided to face this battle head-on, no matter how painful or costly it would be. Our determination to have children was unwavering. Ellen underwent a complex surgery to correct the position of her uterus. I remember holding her hand as they wheeled her into the operating room, my heart heavy with fear and hope. Those were the longest hours of my life, anxiously waiting for any news. When the doctor finally appeared, his face tired but with a reassuring smile, I knew everything had gone well. "The surgery was a success," he said. "We managed to reposition the uterus correctly." Relief washed over me, and I held Ellen tightly when she finally woke up. However, our journey was just beginning. In the weeks that followed, we faced the harsh reality. Even with her uterus corrected, Ellen's ovaries were still not producing mature eggs. Our only hope was in vitro fertilization, IVF. We began treatments immediately, a grueling and emotionally exhausting process. Ellen had to take a series of medications to stimulate egg production, while I did my part in a sterile little container. I remember the endless tests, the daily injections Ellen had to give herself, and the weekly visits to the fertility clinic. Amid all of this, we tried to maintain our normal lives, but it became increasingly difficult. The side effects of the medication left Ellen exhausted and emotionally unstable. There were moments when we fought fiercely, with accusations and yelling filling the air. "You don't understand what I'm going through," Ellen would cry, tears streaming down her face. "It's so easy for you, just doing your part." I felt helpless, unable to ease her suffering. "Do you think I don't want this as much as you? I'm here, aren't I?" Our arguments often ended with Ellen locking herself in the bathroom, sobbing, while I banged on the door, begging for forgiveness. After 2 long years of treatments, the day for the IVF procedure finally came. Ellen and I were tense, barely able to breathe as we waited for the results. When the doctor called us into his office, my heart felt like it would burst out of my chest. "I have good news," he said with a smile. "Ellen is pregnant." Those words lifted all the tension from our shoulders. We hugged, laughing and crying with joy. Our first miracle was on the way. After so much suffering and struggle, after the birth of our daughter, Sarah, it was as if a cloud had lifted from our lives. The joy of being parents outweighed all the difficulties we had faced. However, deep down, there was still a void, an unfulfilled desire. Ellen and I had always dreamed of a large family, full of laughter and love. So, 2 years later, we decided to try again. This time, we were more emotionally prepared for the ups and downs of fertility treatment. Months dragged by, a whirlwind of medications, tests, and fluctuating hopes. There were times when I thought we couldn't handle another disappointment. I remember one particularly difficult night when Ellen cried uncontrollably after a failed cycle. Maybe we should give up, she sobbed. Sarah is already a miracle. Maybe we don't deserve more. Those words broke my heart. I held her tightly, whispering words of comfort. We deserve everything our hearts desire. We won't give up, my love. We'll keep trying. And so we did, month after month, year after year. With each failed cycle, our determination only grew. We refused to let go of our dream. Then, on a spring morning, the phone rang. It was the fertility clinic. My heart raced as I listened to the nurse's voice. Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson. Ellen is pregnant. Tears of joy streamed down my face as I embraced Ellen, spinning her around the room. Our second miracle was on the way. After the birth of Miguel, Ellen and I felt blessed beyond words. 2 miraculous children, a complete and happy family. We decided it was time to close this chapter and focus on raising our little treasures. I scheduled an appointment for a vasectomy, a simple but decisive procedure. I remember feeling a mix of relief and melancholy as I prepared everything. No more grueling treatments, but also no more possibility of children. It's the best thing we can do, Ellen said as we lay in bed that night. Sarah and Miguel are more than enough gifts. She smiled, her eyes shining with contentment. I nodded, pulling her closer. We were complete, and nothing could shake our happiness. Or so I thought. 5 days before my scheduled surgery, the unthinkable happened. Ellen came home, her face pale as a sheet. What's wrong? I asked, immediately concerned. Are you okay? She shook her head, tears starting to roll down her cheeks. I'm pregnant. For a moment, the world stopped spinning. I stared at Ellen, incredulous, sure I had heard wrong. How is that possible? I don't know, she cried, sobbing openly now. It must have been a miracle, a mistake, I don't know. Stunned, I held Ellen tightly. Her belly was still flat, but suddenly it seemed to carry the weight of a million possibilities, a million doubts. In the days that followed, we lived in a state of benevolent shock. How could this be true after everything we had been through? The odds were almost non-existent. The doctors had been clear. But the tests didn't lie. My wife, against all odds, was pregnant again. Naturally, as Ellen's pregnancy progressed, the questions and speculations didn't stop. Friends and family tried to find logical, medical explanations for what seemed like a genuine miracle. Maybe it was an error in the initial exam, some suggested. Or maybe the fertility treatments finally had a delayed effect. I just nodded my head, refusing to downplay what, to me, was undoubtedly a divine intervention. Ellen and I had fought so hard, faced so many seemingly insurmountable obstacles, and now we were being blessed with another undeniable miracle. The doubts of others only strengthened my faith. I saw God's hand guiding every step of our path, opening doors where there seemed to be no way out. I remember one particularly difficult night when Ellen experienced severe cramps and bleeding. We rushed to the hospital, consumed by fear. In the emergency room, as the doctors examined Ellen, I held her hand tightly, praying fervently. Please, God, don't take this miracle away from us, I pleaded, with hot tears rolling down my face. We've been through so many trials, don't abandon us now. The hours that followed were an endless torture of tests and vigils. Finally, the doctor returned, with a relieved smile on his face. The baby is fine, he announced. It was just a scare, but there's no cause for concern. The relief I felt at that moment was indescribable. I hugged Ellen, thanking God for hearing my prayers once again. From that day on, my faith became unshakable. It didn't matter how many skeptics or pseudo-scientific explanations I heard. Nothing would shake my conviction that each of our children was a divine gift. When the day of delivery finally arrived and I heard the loud cries of newborn twin girls, my heart overflowed with gratitude. Ellen had given birth not to one, but to 2 miracles at once. As I held my daughters in my arms, gazing at their perfect faces, I knew that nothing in this world could convince me they weren't direct miracles from God. Each one of them, just like Sarah, Miguel, and the baby still on the way, were living proof that the Lord's ways are truly unfathomable. In the months that followed the birth of my twins, Isabella and Sophia, my house was filled with noise, laughter, and so much love. Ellen and I were exhausted, of course, but we had never felt so complete. Our miraculous family of 5 children was a constant blessing. Every time I heard Sarah's crystal-clear laughter or Miguel's adorable grunts, my heart filled with indescribable gratitude. Sometimes, I'd catch Ellen watching me with a smile as I played with the twins on the floor, making silly faces just to hear them laugh. "You're an amazing father," she'd say, her eyes glowing with pride. "Our children are so lucky to have you." In those moments, everything we had gone through, the disappointments, the exhausting treatments, the bitter tears, seemed to fade away. Every struggle, every trial, had been worth it to get to this point. There were nights, however, when I'd stay awake, watching Ellen and our children sleep peacefully, and the gratitude would hit me with overwhelming force. Silent tears would run down my face as I thought about everything we had overcome, how our path seemed impossible so many times. And then I realized that it hadn't been our strength or determination that had brought us here. It was a much greater power, a divine grace that had guided us through the darkness to this radiant light. With reverence, I'd kneel beside our bed and pray fervently, thanking God for His infinite miracles. I thanked Him for giving me the strength to keep going, even when everything seemed lost. I thanked Him for blessing me not with 1, but 5 heavenly gifts. As I looked around at the sleeping faces of my children, I felt an unshakable determination grow within me. No matter what the future held, I would raise them to recognize and honor the miracles that had brought them into this world. They would know about their mother's struggle, about how we were tested time and again, only to be blessed with even greater gifts. They would grow up knowing they were wanted, loved, and fought for, true miracles of God's ways. And one day, when they became parents themselves, I hope they would look back and see the protective hand that guided them, the same force that led us through the darkness to this eternal light of infinite love and grace. Because that is the true lesson I need to teach. No matter how dark the night may seem, hope and miracles always walk by our side, lighting the way to true fulfillment. You just need to have faith.